Welcome, 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 everyone, to Charting Your Course. I am joined by my intrepid co host, Kathy Ma and Debbie Smart. Welcome to the show, Kathy and Debbie. How you guys doing today?
Doing great. Really excited to do another show. This charting your course is very exciting. Just doing all the little breaking the cycle. Or are we repeating the cycle?
Well, it's a sequel of a cycle.
It's wonderful to be here, both you guys.
So, we have a very unique type of show today. As we said in the beginning of the episodes, we were going to be transitioning. We are going to starting with the basics and transitioning into the more disciplined practitioner. One who wants to take this more than once a month or every 3 months, somebody who wants to make it part of their living the mystically life daily. They want to apply more of the teachings to a broader paint stroke of a direction of who they are, where they're going in life. You guys have heard both Kathy and Debbie's perspective and myself over many shows now. And what we are going to talk here today is about taking many of the teachings we've heard in other shows, reapplying them to a more serious level. So, for this first hour, we are going to be talking about what truly a disciplined practitioner is. It's very easy to point the finger at somebody else's lack of discipline, but nearly impossible to look at yourself when we are not giving ourselves an agenda that has discipline behind it. So I want to bring Kathy in here and to talk about what's the basic discipline that everyone needs and what is the truth of somebody that is doing it authentically each day as part of their greater process.
Being disciplined and having self discipline is probably right up there with one of the hardest things to do, next to grounding. It's so easy to say that I'm disciplined, I practice self discipline all the time. But when you look back through your life and day to day, even just yesterday, and you think, no, what was I doing yesterday? And the fact that you're really struggling to think about what you did already shows you that you didn't practice a lot of self discipline. Because if you did, you would know at least 4 things that you did. Because they're on your I have to do every day list. But it's very difficult to stay self-disciplined in today's world. You wake up, not only do you wake up and there's like 10,000 choices even before you get out of bed, there is also the discipline of, are you going to set up your day? Are you going to spend that 2 to 10 minutes on visualizing what your day is so that you can create the sort of day that you want? And, often, especially in the summertime, it's hard to wake up because you're just so tired from all the heat. So by the time you wake up and your alarm's gone off and you're sort of, sort of oozing out of bed, you've lost that 10 minutes that you would normally use to set up your day. And then from point dot, you've already lost your self-discipline to a certain degree. And we're all guilty of it. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'm sure half the people listening are guilty of it. Even though we like to think we have a lot of self-discipline, things happen to us and get in the way of what we think we should be doing to discipline ourselves. So when you get to this situation where you realizing that you are not exerting your self-discipline every day, especially in the mornings, so that you can set up your day, you really need to stop, take a break, and think, okay, 5 minutes, even if I'm late already, I need that 5 minutes to just quieten my mind, to quieten everything that's going on around me and prioritize what it is that I need to do. Number one, I need to, of course, wake up properly. Number two, do some grounding, set up my day. And number three, for a lot of us, caffeine. And then you move forward to the day. But if you can't actually spend those few minutes to set up your day, it's very difficult to bring the discipline in throughout the day because you're always 2 steps behind. And let's say, for example, you are really rushing to work, you have a half an hour drive to get to work as well. When you get in the car, you can practice your discipline. And I don't mean just be calm while you're driving. I mean, you mentally going through things that you would have done when you first woke up. You can do it when you're driving. And I don't mean meditate and close your eyes while you're driving. I mean, in your mind's eye, do the stuff that you hadn't done when you first got up. because even if you can't catch the first lot of discipline for yourself, you can catch it throughout the morning and then going into the evening. Some of us are not morning people, that we're night people, so it's harder to get going with that kind of discipline in the beginning. If you know that you're not a morning person, then you really need to allow yourself more time. You almost need 2 alarm clocks. One to waken you up so that you know in 15 minutes you have to get up because your second alarm will go off. But in that time, you can ooze around in bed and do whatever it is you want. And then when your second alarm goes off, you then realize that now it's time for discipline. I've got to do all these things in my sequence of things that I've set up. The more that you can do that, the more empowered you're going to feel because you have handled that day, you've handled that morning. For those of us that are morning people, this shouldn't be an issue at all. But when you get to later in the evening, like when you get back from work, you're like exhausted and you know you're supposed to do your grounding, get rid of all the energy that's within you that you've brought home. If you're too tired to do that, that is the time where you have to practice your self-discipline more and think, you know what, if I don't do this, I'm going to take all this energy with me to bed and then I'm going to sleep around it and really almost scare yourself in a way, although I don't mean scare yourself, but, you know, highlight to yourself what's going to happen if you don't do it. If you really can't get motivated, go into the bathroom and splash cold water on your face, whatever it is for you. But you need to have that wake up period so that you can have that down minute, de-stress, decompress, whatever it is. But at the same time, it's a time that you spend for yourself, about yourself, to re-energize yourself. This kind of really simple, basic thing sounds so easy to do, but when you're living a hectic life, especially if you've got kids, it's very difficult to find this morning and evening time alone. If you have kids or a lot of animals and they just will not leave you alone when you get home, that's the time where you think, you know what, I'm just going to say I'm going to the bathroom, close the door, and do all that stuff in the bathroom. You don't actually have to be sitting on the toilet or having a shower. You can just close that door because generally speaking, people do not come in. If you say you're using the bathroom, one hopes that they will honor your privacy and not come in. But these are like, I suppose I call them very simple, basic disciplinarian things you can do for yourself to give yourself that time to be self-disciplined. Because when you are self-disciplined and you then feel that empowerment, whether it's starting the day or ending the day, that energy that you're bringing through is so strong that it will replenish you and regenerate you for either the day or the evening and before you sleep. That's one of the simplest things to do.
We innately know when we have our second wind. Oftentimes, people who are working, they need just a break, and then they get their second wind of energy. Discipline works the same way. So I want to bring the same question now to Debbie. What is adult discipline with adult disciplined actions behind it versus more of a recreational discipline? Similar to the question I asked Kathy, how do you see making the change from the simple versions to the more complex version of discipline where we are following through with the greater agenda?
Yes, and it is. It's a really complex type of a question area of being with the self-discipline because, like Kathy said, it depends on how you start your day and what effort that you can put into that, and you have to look at each person as individual, has different sets of things that they have to deal with. And for myself, I'm in a really good situation where I don't have young children. But for people who do have young children, to make that time for themselves is very, very important. And so this is where the self-discipline of setting the alarm clock maybe 10 minutes earlier than normal, even though you may not be a morning person, but you're going to feel the different stress factors that come up in your life if you don't set and create your day ahead of time. If you can put your focus and energy, even for 2 to 3, 4, 5 minutes, in how you'd like to see your day unfold, energizing yourself, clearing yourself and grounding yourself before you go is highly, highly important to set your day up But I have also done for myself, if I haven't had that time because something else all of a sudden that I wasn't expecting interfered with that, and I have gotten in the car, I mean, driving to work, that is also where I've, done affirmations while I'm driving, set my intent ahead of time to where I'm going to, especially if it's the workplace. I've set my intention where that I walk into my own energy there and create everybody smiling and everything running smoothly, because we do create our own reality. And so we have to have that discipline if we want to have our life running smoothly. We have to put some effort into that, because we can get blindsided every which way and not stay balanced. We're still going to be faced with certain issues that are going to present themselves during the day, but if we have got ourselves in a balanced mind state and we've set boundaries about how we wanted our day to be, then we can deal with these issues because we've put the discipline aside and worked with that and already created something. And so in our subconscious mind, we already have something set up for us to walk into. There's so many different aspects to everybody's day. And at night time, I find for myself, because I'm not a great morning person, but I do, when I do wake up, instead of sitting up in a lotus position like a lot of people probably do to meditate first thing in the morning, if I'm still feeling really tired, I will lay there and on my pillow, and I will focus and create my day like that, because that's where I feel most comfortable and I can get into that really deeper focus. At night time, when I hop into a bath, I recreate again about what I want to bring into my life. Not about creating my day, but what I want to set up for my life, creating my goals and my dreams. And so that's another wonderful place that you can give yourself time, is in the bathtub. If you're a shower person, you can still do the same thing. You can just take a couple of minutes without being too active in the shower and just get yourself in that balanced state. Feel that water that's running down over your body, getting you really more into a calm mental state of being, where you can really get into that focus and set goals in your mind. Start creating your reality. Start a vision board even if you have time over a weekend to put up a vision board and you wake up in the morning and you don't have time to create your day. You've got certain things on that vision board that you want to bring into your life. You can just sit up and look at that, or look at that, put that in your bathroom while you're in the mirror doing your hair or whatever. And you can set up all sorts of different things to help you with your discipline.
Exactly. Help you set up with the discipline. So now I bring the next question to Kathy is, we talked before about getting that second wind. During the break, you had described it as pools of energy that the self can tap into at times. These pools of energy are always there. Example, if somebody had to go out and move a bunch of dirt in their backyard and they had to do it on their own versus paying someone to do it, there's a level of motivation that creates that pool of energy. How do you see these pools of energy that we can activate them without paying ourselves to do work?
I love the way you put that. When it comes to pools of energy, it's amazing how many reserve pools we actually do have. And I think often what I find with myself and with people that I do readings for is that it's very, how do you put it? It's very prioritized. Like, you will have a pool of energy that comes to you throughout the day. You normally would have, on average, let's say 2 pools of energy, and one usually is before a lunch, because your system is kicking in. You're going to be eating, and you're already thinking about that. And the other one tends to be, for some people, mid-afternoon, whereas others are like early evening. And when I say pools of energy, it's almost like those are reserves. So you know that if you've been dull or lethargic during the day, at that particular time, you're going to have a spurt of energy where you can get a lot done. It's like you get a whole day's stuff done in that 1 hour. And to be able to tap into that sort of more willy-nilly, like on call, really requires a lot of focus. And I guess we'll go back to the discipline on the part of yourself. when you are aware that you do have these pools of energy, and if you chart it yourself, just throughout the weeks that are coming up, if you don't know when your pools of energy usually pop up. If you chart over the weeks, you will see that there's a pattern, and there's certain times where you will have these, we'll call them energetic spurts. And whether you choose to do something with them or not is completely up to you. But there's generally certain times for different people that will come up. And if you are trying to access this pool of energy at a time where you normally don't, it doesn't pop up. Let's say if your pool of energy, your first pool of energy usually happens after lunch. Let's say 3 to 4 o'clock. I just make this up. But you know that you really need to access it around 10:30 to 11:30 because you have a big conference coming up at just at lunchtime. You've got to get all this stuff done. You need incredible brain work. You need a lot of high energy to get all your consciousness together. What you would do is the day before, you already set up this kind of scenario. So going back to what Debbie said about how you set up the day or the future, well, she does it in the evenings when she's having a bath. It's a similar type of process. The night before or the day before, whenever you do your creating, you know you're going to access that pool. So you will visualize that. You would manifest it. So instead of manifesting, let's say, I have a wonderful, easy work day with all my colleagues, which you might do normally, you would then say, I want to be able to access my pool of energy between 3 and 4 o'clock. And if I have two pools of energy, I want to access them both between 3 and 4 o'clock or 10:30 to 11:30, whatever time it was, because you have all this stuff that you need to be have done. You set it up, you put that intention out there, you visualize it, you feel it in your body, almost like you know that you're going to access it. The next day, so the morning of, you visualize it again, you do your visualization of you easily tapping into that source of energy. So when the time comes, whether you truly believe you did or didn't, you will find that you can tap into that energy. Some people will say to me, oh yeah, but it's because I just kept thinking about it. That's why I could do it. And I say to them, it doesn't really matter how you think it worked, as long as it does work for you. If you can't believe that you set that scenario up yourself, if you don't trust yourself enough to be able to create that, then just trust in that the universe did it for you. It doesn't really matter where you think it came from, as long as your desired result is that you can access it. When you talk about pools of energy that happen to us every day, imagine you have a whole, what do you call it thing where you have lots of lakes in it? Let's just call it an island then, with lots of little lakes inside the island. And if you can imagine, you've got a building in the middle of the island, and you're trying to access all those little lakes around you, to pool it together, to come to your building in the middle, to give you running water. It's kind of like that. Yes. It's kind of like that. You're accessing your pools of energy all around, and you're pulling them into your building, which is you, so that you can access them whenever you want. So the more that you do this on a daily or weekly basis, the more adept you're going to be at being able to recall it when you need it. It probably won't work every time you try it, but the more you practice it, the more that you will be able to easily access those pools of energy that you normally would just wait for a certain time for it to click on. Did I explain that well?
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Very, very, very good. Debbie, what do you have to add to pools of energy and how we have access to that second wind?
I've been very well aware of when my energy drops, and like Kathy was saying, mine drops around about between the 3 and 4, and sometimes just after lunch, if if I had too much of a heavy lunch at work. There's what I've done for myself in the past, and it may be helpful to others, is I always keep in my drawer at work. I always kept a little packet of like emergency C with some electrolytes in it, just to help me boost up some energy. I've also gone and stepped outside or gone into the bathroom if I'm at work and really felt that energy dropping. I've gone into the bathroom into a cubicle there, and I've visualized pulling the energy up through my feet from Mother Earth and bringing it all the way up through the top of my head like a fountain coming through. And that visualization used to work quite well for me. And also, I know there's different types of energy drinks, but I go for more like the superfood type things. I used to have a little container of a superfood that I would just put into a little bit of juice or water, and that would also help bring up my energy a bit. But if you wanted to do it more on a spiritual level, to be bringing up that energy, those pools of energy when they're dropping, is to go into that focus state and pull that energy up from the earth. You know, so I don't know. I think that's probably about the only couple of things that I really did do that worked for me, is to do it through that way. There's so many different ways that we can access it. We all have different energy drops at different times, and it depends on what you're going to do and what you're going to need that energy for. I needed mine more for concentration at work. Other people need it for energy when they're on construction sites. They feel that energy dropping, and that's probably a good time for when they can have something like a health food drink that can help boost up their energy, that they can draw from that. Because a lot of the time, when we're doing so much in our mind, we're burning energy, and also when we're doing things physically, we're burning energy, and it's sometimes really good to be able to replace it with, some healthy supplements.
Debbie, when you say superfood, is that actually a thing? I mean, a brand or?
Yes. Yes, Kathy, it's well, there's different brands, but they're different brands, and they call it superfood. But it has a mix of greens, of vegetables, and nutrients in it, and protein in it that helps boost up your energy levels.
I'll put that on
Like
my list.
protein drinks that don't have protein in them, they're more of instant calorie energy that you can burn right away that isn't carbs.
Right.
So there's another thing is when you start adding protein to the body, you give it energy. So there are a tremendous amount of people that wake up in the morning and have to have a breakfast right away. So those people, their peak energy will be when that breakfast has gone out of the stomach through the duodenum and into the intestinal tract, so that their heart rate can slow down and the rest of their energies can come forward. That's just part of their programming. Each day we have the greatest hour of power. For those that are breakfast eaters, doesn't matter what it is you're having for breakfast, your hour of power is generally 4 hours to 5 hours after you wake up. That isn't everyone. Some people, their hour of power is within that first hour of waking up. From a spiritual perspective, work, jobs, and all the other things that go on with life begin to alter our natural hours of power. So when one wants to work with their spiritual hour of power, you must be able to take the protocols and subtleties of work out of the equation of what is your true hour of power. For some people, it's the witching hour, 3 o'clock in the morning, because their mind agrees that everyone's asleep and there's no one watching them. And for others, that truth is the highest of noon or the greatest of a thunderstorm, so on and so forth. Getting your alignment into the hour of power is where you do your greatest disciplined work. It is where you prepare hours, weeks, and months ahead of time for something that you know inevitably is going to come to your reality. And with a disciplined practitioner, you greet it with a smile and an open heart, and you enjoy the flow of that moment, because there is that infinite pool of energy that both Kathy and Debbie have been talking about. And you have access to that at all times. It is just the vital knowingness when your greatest hours, and charting your course of when to use those energy allows you to move energy from one canal to another, to get a great physical job in front of you, such as moving the dirt, mowing the lawn, taking after the kids. And then you can move the canal of energy into another area so that you can have deep, relaxing, regenerating sleep. And then when you wake up, move the pool to get ready to go to work. We innately do this behind the scenes at all times, but we are taking a conscious, active choice to be a part of that. Choice points are so important when we understand how these pools of energy come to us. They are windows of opportunity where all we have to do is acknowledge it and the energy flows. Unacknowledging it, not acknowledging it, and not giving its proper place closes off that window of opportunity so that the peak of your highest energy, that hour of power, can flow with you in equal co creation.
It's also very interesting, don't you think, that some people differ in months with their pool of energies.
Absolutely.
Like for me, for example, winter, I am the most efficient ever. I have a lot of energy, or I access a lot of different pools at times that in the summer, those pools of energy just do not exist for me.
The exact same with me. I am far more of an winter active person.
I
Hmm.
also find around the full moon time is when my mind becomes very active and my energy is really high. And that's when I take advantage of, really creating the biggest things I want to create that month.
Full moon is just such an interesting time for any type of energy. I mean, well, here comes our break. We'll catch up with you as soon as these messages are finished. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Charting Your Course with myself, Kathy Ma, and the amazing Andrew Bartzis and the phenomenal Debbie Smart. Remember, you can get a private session with Andrew, Debbie, or myself by contacting Tanok at galactichistorian.com. Oh, mouthful today. TENOCH at galactichistorian.com. And we'll be able to get to the bottom of your issues and help you see a better way ahead. And for those of you who don't know, Andrew is offering a free video series called Living the Mystical Life Daily. He shows you some tools and gives you knowledge about how to have mystical experiences in your everyday life. Sign up for free at andrewbartzis.com. Just put your name and email when you get to the page and you'll receive the first video right away. Again, just get it at andrewbartzis.com and enter your name and email to receive the Living the Mystical Life Daily series. And if you'd like to learn more about Debbie Smart, please check out her website at innerdimensionhypnotherapy.net. And if you'd like to learn more about me, you can check out everything about me at my website, which is kathyspearlsofwisdom.com. That's Kathy with a K. And today we're talking about, well, so far we've been talking about self-discipline and our pools of energy, what it's like to be a disciplined practitioner, how it's easy to point the fingers at others because of the lack of discipline, but hard to see our own. And that's probably one thing I didn't mention before, is that it is so true. It's easy to criticize others and say they have a lack of discipline, but hard to always recognize that sometimes it's a reflection of our own lack of self-discipline. One very basic example of that would be, you may look at your child and think, I've told them a million times that they need to do this, and that's because of their lack of discipline that they're not doing it. Rather than flip it around to yourself and say, well, obviously I'm not being disciplined enough to teach them how to do that when they're supposed to be doing it. And it's
but
all
that
these
would question the ego, though.
Yes, yes, but this is the hard bit, isn't it? No one
That's
wants
the
to look
discipline.
at themselves. But it's something that we're all guilty of. I mean, I'm a big guilty person when it comes to that.
Same here.
Especially disciplining the dog.
Yes, the dog wins every time.
I know. Like, why doesn't she do that? And then,
And she knows.
Yes, she's looking at me like toying with me. Yet I don't spend more time to keep teaching her the same thing again and again because I'm busy or I'm doing whatever. So we're guilty of it to all different degrees throughout our lives. And taking ownership of that is very difficult. But when you do take ownership of it, your life does become easier because you deal with things better.
You deal with things because you have built-in coping mechanisms that stop you from going into deep polarity. That's another form of discipline, coping mechanisms. instilling them into you. You say grounding, 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 to the point where, people just don't even hear it anymore because they hear it everywhere else. But the truth is in grounding. Grounding's
Yes.
its own unique discipline.
Oh, yes. Great discipline.
Yeah.
And it's
For you,
very,
a grounding, for me, it's ceremony. And I say ceremony, ceremony, ceremony until they don't want to listen to it anymore.
and it's so important to be grounded when you're doing the disciplines.
Exactly. Because if you're not grounded and having fun when you're doing them, guess what? You are more than likely not doing it right or failing at it miserably.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the same as of the journaling, I'd
Yeah.
imagine as well with people. It's so easy just to skip days, skip tomorrow,
Months, skip months
Yeah.
at a time. And to come back with it, with 5 sentences, per month. That's still faking it. That's still faking the journey.
But it's being able to take ownership of that and say, yes, I've fallen. Today's a new day. I choose.
And like the commercial, I've fallen and I can't get up is not your actions or your words. I've fallen and I will get up.
And this is where you
Know
make
that commercial?
choices. Yeah. This is where you make choices about, how how disciplined are you going to be, and where are you going to put the discipline into your everyday life.
Not only your everyday life, but into your practical intelligence, the one that solves all your problems each day.
Yes.
Okay? That's our reason, our intellect and reason. It has to be a part of our intellect and reason at such a high level so that when a unique set of problems come up that have a choice point that says, I'm not going to be disciplined, I'm not going to follow through with it because it's too hard for me now. We've all put ourselves where we've taken a project on that was too big, and we still accomplished it at the end.
I know for myself, when I've gone through certain stages like that, and you're getting faced with some really major issues in your life, and you're going to make certain choices. the most powerful place to make those choices is to go into a quiet place and go within yourself and really get into that meditative state where that you can actually connect to your higher self and start asking for help and getting the answers, so that you're going into that spiritual realm and connecting with source and opening yourself up to getting a true answer. And that takes discipline to put that time aside to make that choice to take it into spirit.
Taking it into spirit. And there's our next conversation piece. Trusting in spirit. Trust is a discipline. Is it or is it not?
It is.
Definitely.
Trust is a discipline. Trust has all sorts of choice points behind it. So, Kathy, what is your overall explanation of trust? And then I'll have Debbie come in here and we're going to try to synthesize a more deeper understanding of what trust is.
Trust is, in many ways, it is difficult to define because it encompasses so many things. But to summarize, I would say trust is all about what you choose to believe or support or endorse from your own self. And by that, I mean everything in life is a choice. So if you were to trust someone, trust something, you, in your own way, are endorsing that opinion, that behavior, that thought process, the being, whatever it is. But how you come to the choice of whether or not you think something is trustworthy is a completely different kettle of fish. The trust act itself is almost indiscernible because by the time you realize you've trusted someone, something, some situation, you've already, I don't know how to put this, you've already trusted it before you realize you've trusted it. And
that's called tacit consent.
Yes, tacit consent, that's true.
And we run across that in the contract revocations all the time, where we consent to something without a nod or an agreement. We just let it happen.
Yes, because there's a certain feeling within us that it felt right, or it felt good, or it felt positive. And in many instances, we don't go through a long sort of screening process to get from that A to B decision. Often it's very quick and decisive. And in many ways, we rely upon our own instinct, I suppose, our own sixth sense, our own knowingness to discern whether or not we believe it. Believe it, therefore trust it. Because often belief is required for trust, but not necessary. That sounds weird. I'm trying to think of a good
No,
example.
it's absolutely real what you're saying there. Debbie, what do you have to add there?
Trust is it's such a multi-dimensional aspect of everything. And I feel like when I'm thinking about the word trust, it's about being open and receptive to the person, whether you're trusting them or not. The trust is being open and receptive and agreeing. Otherwise, if you don't trust what they're saying, you shut down, you close down, and and you're feeling a bit shut off because you don't trust what they're saying or they're telling you, or you don't trust their character. So there's different aspects and levels to the word trust, and it's and it's like whatever, and it can start right from a baby as to how you've been treated when you first come into the world, and the way if you get mishandled by the medical establishment and get hurt and injected with things, and also different things can go wrong or pulled out with forceps. It affects your whole life. And so there could be a mistrust for doctors, there could be a mistrust for medical. It just depends on what experiences that you have had out throughout your life as to where your level of trust sits or lies. And so, it really is a choice of individual experience as to what you're going to trust. Trusting on a more of a spiritual level, when you start to trust into that inner voice or your higher mind, or trusting what you're getting through, some people say directly coming through from source, which is coming through your higher mind, and trusting and following that intuition, and you've had the experience that that intuition has led you to something wonderful. At the times when you think you're tuning in and you're trusting into what you think is coming through, you have to know to be able to discern what I'm getting through. Can I trust this? So, there's certain different aspects and levels
Exactly.
as to it. Yeah.
Trust is a multi-dimensional, multi-part of our functioning process that has many seen and unseen choice points behind it. Tacit consent, there's a fine line between what is tacit consent and what is trust, and what is trust to tacit consent. Tacit consent can be something as simplistic as a mother watching a child play in their front yard. And the tacit consent is I'm trusting the child to do the right thing. Okay.
Mm.
And then you have another form, which is the mother who doesn't trust the child because the child's run out into the street a dozen times.
Yes, and so by just observing the behaviour is where your level of trust can form from that for the child.
And
Yeah.
at each point in that metaphor, there are choice points that are being made to put trust into something that will potentially generate issues of other trusting issues in the unseen world. I don't trust my kid. I don't trust my kid. Okay, he did it good this day. 10 days later, he ran back out in the street. I don't trust my kid. I don't trust my kid. Subtly, you are now transiting the power of trust to that child.
Right, and then you can look at the child abuse.
Yes.
When a child gets abused by a parent, it creates all sorts of fear and phobias in that child, and they lose that level of trust. It changes who they are completely.
Yes. Yes. And then we have, the more deeper layers of trust. What's stronger than a mother and a mother and the child. There are those that have their twin flame or whatever you want to call it, and there you generate a whole different level of trust when you are in that form of love.
Yes.
The hierarchical structure to trust. We allow them more and more into our true consciousness that is us each day.
Yeah. And it's like, if a parent sort of does the wrong thing by a child, they lose that trust in that parent for the choices that they make. If they see, say they see their father or mother make a really bad choice and it has adverse effect on the person, on the child, then that level of trust that they held for that parent is gone. And then that reflects back into relationships further on in their life too, is whether can they trust their partner to make the right decisions, or is it going to affect them in any way physically?
Especially the choices that parents make around money. Okay.
Mm.
Those are what create those arguments that a lot of those arguments that Debbie was just talking about. Then you have those kids who are always trusting that money is there. And by the time they're 18, mom and dad have lost their job or have to retire, and there is no money.
Mm.
Okay?
Yes, yes, that certainly changes a person in what they believe and what they trust and who they trust.
Our subtle, trusting energy is what, how do I put this, creates the signature frequency teaching of negativity to come. When we're over trusting or under trusting, and something gets through our levels of trust, we beat ourselves up. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That is a
Mm.
very powerful proverb of the day.
And it's so true as well. I don't know how many times that, people have gone through a certain experience and still want to hold that level of trust. And so they step back into doing it a second time, and then they get burnt a second time. And it's like, how so? Then discernment becomes very, very strong within that trust. Having to be able to discern whether you can trust a situation or whether you can trust a certain person just through your own life experiences.
And that's where one of the big problems lies, isn't it, when it comes to experiences in the past? Like one of the issues I see a lot in my clients, which I'm sure both of you do as well, is trusting another person. And this is within relationships, and holding that distrust through to new relationships and future relationships. And that is such a hard one. That's a very hard cycle to break, is if you have your trust broken within a love relationship and that relationship ends, how do you then reform trust with new relationships and not carry that with you and burden your new relationship with that distrust?
Yes, and it's very common that that does happen, and it does affect the relationship. It's also even in my field of hypnotherapy. But the bad media that's been put out against there, that have put a certain amount of fear in people, thinking that if you get hypnotized, you're going to be completely, mind controlled. And it's completely the opposite. You are still fully in control, and you're still fully aware of what's going on. The wonderful thing about more this day and age is that I think the aspect of the new age growth so much now is that people are really starting to trust more into their spirit and trusting their gut feeling or the intuition on certain things and modalities, whereas before there was a lot of fear-based stuff put out there. And so it's learning to trust, being able to know what's really true, and that's where you really have to dig deep inside yourself, and that's where the intuition really needs to become strong within you, so that you can get that level of trust. Do I trust this person, or do I trust this situation? Do I trust that modality? Is that going to work for me? There's all sorts of different choices that we have to make along with those, with those issues.
Every day, so many choices.
Yes.
I mean, being in your line of business, you must see a lot of trust issues that come through from past lives, I would imagine, like people's fear of things. Like I think, Andrew, in our pre-show talk, we talked about distressing water, which maybe have nothing to do with this lifetime, yet all throughout their life they distrust the water, worried that what was going to happen to them if they go in. Um, do you find that a lot of that comes up in these hypnotherapy sessions?
Yes, I find that, with the hypnotherapy session, that's where the phobias come out, I suppose, because of some experience that they've had either in a past life or in their childhood. a lot of the time it's been in past lives, and especially around the time where they've been um, thrown into water and drowned. I know they did that when they were testing out whether someone was a witch or not a witch, and they'd, throw them into water, and if they drowned, well, then they weren't a witch. But if they floated, they were a witch. So,
yeah, but they're already drowned. I know. It just seems so illogical.
They wanted to kill them regardless, obviously. But also the level of trust in even when when you have clients come to you, Kathy, trusting in enough that what you're going to tell them is what they need to hear. It's the same as when a person comes to me and they say, well, they open up their whole life and their issues and their problems, so that you have to have a level of trust that that doesn't go anywhere. It's like a confidential, that I keep a lot of stuff very confidential. I ask permission if I'm going to share on air, but I never mention names, but I do mention things that happen, that experiences that I've had with people from many years ago as well, but I've always had permission to be able to talk about these things.
I guess it's one of those things as well that, like, going back to, people trusting us when they do consulting with us, is I always say to people, one of the big things you must decide for yourself is, does this resonate with you? Even if the actual words don't resonate because possibly the situations are just too weird or too way out there for them to understand or comprehend. It's whether or not the words resonate for you. Even if you were doing, like, let's say an hour session with someone, and everything you talked about, let's say 80% of it didn't make any sense or didn't resonate because you couldn't possibly see these things happen, then you really need to be able to talk to a person and say, well, let's just talk about me in the now, and discuss a few different things so that you can find that mutual resonation with each other. And I've only ever experienced it twice where I didn't completely resonate for two people, but those situations were very unique in that there was just too much change that was coming up, and later, a few months later, they called me up to tell me what happened and how it came to pass, and they couldn't believe it, blah blah blah. But it was excuse me, important for them to find that resonation, and even if it wasn't immediate, when it did come up, then they could truly understand everything else and then trusted more in what we had discussed and saw coming up for them and planned accordingly. And this often happens even not just with people in our business, but with all sorts of situations, even friend to friend, brother to sister. Sometimes you're just talking on two different wavelengths. Doesn't mean one is right, one is wrong, but when you can finally join in that same frame of reference, it makes it easier to understand. And therefore, the trusting, I guess, emotion is much stronger.
Yes, and I've had experiences too with clients where they didn't know whether they really trusted the process of hypnosis, and it made it very difficult. So then I had to go through and process them in a way that allowed them to relax enough to allow that process to occur. I know a couple of people have come to me and said, well, I don't know if I can be hypnotized. I don't even know if I believe in hypnosis and whether I do have a higher self that I can connect with. And that makes it very difficult when you don't have that trust and you're not that open. It's very difficult to open up the conscious mind to the subconscious mind because there's a block. And and a couple of times I've actually had to ask my the clients to go listen to some meditations and just get more relaxed and start to feel that connection, that inner connection for themselves, so that they can build up that trust within themselves first and then come back to me.
Well, that's the break coming up, and we'll catch you right after these messages. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us today with Charting Your Course with myself, Kathy Ma, and the amazing Andrew Bartzis and the phenomenal Debbie Smart. And for those of you interested in private sessions and then want to go deeper with your questions and issues with either Andrew, Debbie, or myself, go ahead and call the office now at 1 for US 360-894-0692, and they'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Again, the number for a one-on-one session with Andrew, Debbie, or myself is 1 for US 360-894-0692. And for those of you who don't know, Andrew is offering a free video series called Living the Mystical Life Daily. He shows you some tools and gives you knowledge about how to have mystical experiences in your everyday life. So sign up for free at andrewbartzis.com. Just put your name and email when you get to the page, and you'll receive the first video right away. Again, just get it at andrewbartzis.com and enter your name, email, and receive the Living the Mystical Life Daily series. And for those of you that would like to know more about Debbie, please check out her website at innerdimensionhypnotherapy.net. And if you'd like to learn more about me, please check out my website, which is kathyspearlsofwisdom.com. That's Kathy with a K. And today we're talking about all sorts of interesting stuff. Self-discipline, disciplined, being a disciplined practitioner, pools of energy and how we can access our pools of energy, and trust so far.
Trust.
I know.
So I want to use some common metaphors so people can, in their own contemplations, in their own times to observe themselves, can see how they have trust. Here's an example. When you go to cut a tomato, you trust that you're not going to cut yourself. When you go to cross the street, you trust yourself to look left and right, but 90% of the people don't. When we get into our car, we trust that we're going to make it to work until something happened that stops us. A variety of metaphors can be used to help expand where trust comes in. Trust is a border, a boundary, and an expression of the spirit all in one. When lovers or those that have been close have broken trust, all of their borders become in question and they become overwhelmed with frustration until trust is earned again and those borders are realigned and the exchange of energy is returned to trust. Trust is one of those things that has cycles to it. There are cycles of trust that we give to our work until we only get a 10-cent raise per hour, and then we don't trust our work and we look to something else. One of the hardest things that all people do is putting trust in spirit, trusting in spirit. So much of what is spiritual is trusting in spirit, trusting in the disciplined master that is you to live the mystical life daily, to not acknowledge the ups and downs in your life, to be a part of the ever-evolving dance of energy that's around you in your awake and your sleeping world, to be a part of the ancestral world and astral world without it causing harm or negativity to you. It is your sovereign right to experience those worlds and your own duty to upkeep the continuous creation, to communicate with those so you are not affected negatively by them. Trust is the set of choice points, even when trusting in spirit. Oftentimes it is our ego that does not want us to trust, or the perverted egos of others who have imprinted upon us to not trust. So many people who become hermits have lost trust in humanity. And when one loses trust in humanity and tries to heal themselves and realize that they have an alone journey into healing, they lose trust in their soul. And that's called the dark night of the soul. When you've lost trust in your higher purpose, your higher mission, your higher isness and beingness, when you bring into question and doubt everything that was, that should have happened, positive or negative. Those dark nights of the soul is where all trust is lost. Regaining trust is understanding the choices behind it, so we no longer make the continuous, cyclical, habitual mistakes we made in the previous generations of ourself, the previous iterations of us trying to get better in life. We've all had those times in our life. We tried and tried and tried and clawed, and no matter what, we couldn't get out of it. And then one day you were out of it. and you found yourself traumatized and knowing that you had to get yourself out of that funk. We've all been in that funk before. That is re-exerting trust, re-exerting boundaries, reigniting the passion and flame to be alive. That is ultimately what discipline is. It is that passion and flame and the fan that keeps air, fresh air going to it. That is what trust and discipline are when they're a synchronized and syncopated expression that allows the greater spirit to flow into the experience, have its incredible exterior moment that allows the fullness of heart through it. We can't have that much trust. Every woman who has given birth has given trust to the birthing process. So I want to bring up to Debbie now and to Kathy, but Debbie first, trusting in spirit. The manifest things of this world have their own values of trust behind it. But when trusting in spirit or trusting in God or any of those higher forms of energy that are functioning in and around us at all times.
That is a really, really big issue with a lot of people, is learning to trust in spirit. And I, for myself, I think it took time for me in my process to fully trust that, in spirit, and that it would work. And it's only by putting the time and effort into that discipline and going within myself and connecting with that higher aspect of myself to start learning to trust in spirit that I started working in that level and started manifesting through that way and started to create my reality. I saw my whole life change around. And so that trusting in spirit is that you actually have to trust in your own process of engaging it and doing it. And it's only in the doing of the discipline and getting in there and actually working at it that you build up the trust, and then you get the knowingness that does work, and this is true, and this is the real thing that is, the way to work with spirit. A lot of people lose their way. They get sidetracked with different things that are out there. But you don't know if something's going to work until you put the effort into it and the time into it, behind it. And for me, I just cannot reiterate enough how important it is to really put the effort into your life and into creating your reality and putting in that trust into spirit, because it does work. And only, you have to get the experience. And they only say truth really exists in your own experience, because what's truth to somebody else may not be your truth. It's only through your own experience and putting it into practice that it's going to come about, and that you will actually get that understanding of what trust in spirit truly is, was when you put that work in it yourself.
Elegantly put, Debbie, elegantly put. And there's another way to see what Debbie said. Here's just another little layer. When you're trusting in spirit, it is trusting in your own process. But so many people make the mistake of not trusting in their process enough and trusting in the process of the unseen world. And that's one of their big discernment mistakes of the energy that's coming out of them, that's defining them as an adult being or an infantile being.
That's a deep one.
Yeah, very, very deep.
That's the challenge we are at when we are now taking this to the intermediate level. We've now done 7, 8 shows at the basics, and we are starting to sample some of the intermediate stuff that's going to go out there. So you are going to get those, those psychic pipe bombs of information that are going to come off that are deep, because we are here to not just challenge people to expand their reality, but to co-create with the expansion. We truly want people to see multidimensional living isn't multitasking. Whoever believes they're multitasking is one of the biggest bull hockeyers out there. Okay? So for those of you that are trusting yourself multitasking, you are actually trusting yourself to not do the right thing. And there are those that can say, I can do this and I do this and this. And I'm going to say, you're not doing all of them effectively. In fact, you're diluting your brain. Okay?
As the same with when I do focus too, Andrew. I used to create a list of things that I wanted to create, and I looked at when I looked at it, and you can talk about multitasking, right? You can look at a whole lot of things that you want to get done. But I found that by trying to do everything all at once, like multitasking all at once, it takes away the energy.
Yep. And
And
the
so
joy.
it dilutes it, yes, and the joy. And so I found that really to get something, to create something and get it to work, is to put all that focus and energy into one thing at a time. And that's what empowers it.
That's right. It empowers it and it gives you energy back, because
Mhm.
that's what these tasks are supposed to be, not chores. They're taking energy away from you. These are things that are supposed to use the power of trust to give you energy back as part of the equal co-creation process. Our reality is fundamentally working like that all the time, yet we just don't trust it all the time to do that, because too often the reality has stung us like the scorpion.
Yes, and if you're going with the belief system that you don't know if this is going to work or not, and you go in there with a level of doubt, this is what you're just going to create more of, is doubt. So
Yeah.
you have to drop that doubt and say, I'm going to allow myself to trust this process and put my pure thought of creating and putting my pure energy behind this, because I'm going to trust myself enough to be able to do it.
So, Kathy, what do you have to add to the trusting in spirit conversation?
I guess I'm probably looking at it from a different perspective. Um, when I talk to people about, trusting with spirit, with your own spirit, with the spirit around, and all different realms, for me, one of the I guess I'm thinking of a good way to put this. There, there needs to be a way that you can be discerning about different energies, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. So, of course, when you delving into all these kind of things with to do with spirit, and your own spirit around you, accessing information or realms that, in a way, many people would consider woo woo out there. The most important thing, of course, always go back to being grounded, because when you are grounded, you can be more discerning with information. Your own sense of what is true, not true, right or wrong will be much more heightened. But also, what is very important to do is protection. You must always protect yourself whenever you're going into any of these kind of realms or um, states for yourself, because when you enter those kind of realms or altered states, you're not necessarily always aware of the energies around you. And some of them can be quite insidious, and they just sneak in almost like a virus. They just sneak in the back door, and you don't realize that's entered your frequency at all until much later. So by putting up a layer of protection or protecting yourself, when you're doing this kind of work, is really very important. Andrew, you've talked about the protection of the four corners of your bedroom and your bed before, which is an excellent way to go. But definitely daily cleansing and protection for yourself and your home is very important, and your workplace as well, especially if you have a lot of people around you. Because, to put it simply, imagine a scenario like this. If you're out in a spiritual realm and you're new, you're unfamiliar with everything, and someone comes up and says, or an energy comes up and says, I'm your great grandmother, and I need you to listen to me. I've got all this wonderful life advice and blah blah blah. And anyway, I also think you should do XYZ. And because this energy has told you or indicated to you certain things that resonate with you, you therefore, in consequence, believe everything else. But to me, I would say, just because an energy might resonate a little bit with you in some truth doesn't mean that everything else by default is true or will happen or is right. Um, if you were to meet, and this is like an extreme example, if you were to meet an ex-murderer energy, of course they would disguise themselves as something wonderful and mythical and, like a pixie or something, and then communicate with you, and then later on guide you down some sort of dark path. It's not like these energies come with passports and fingerprint ID. So until you're very familiar with what you're dealing with, the type of energies that you're dealing with, the realms that you're entering, you have to be very, very careful and very protective of yourself, your being, your energy, your aura, all the space that you codes that you exist in on a day-to-day basis, because you just don't know what you might end up having attached to yourself and not realize. And then once that's in your energy and you don't even understand it and you're not doing proper cleansing routine, it will incorporate itself into you, and you will end up having other kind of issues and other kind of problems that weren't yours to start with.
Exactly. What you just described is that mistrust placed. See, so many people trust that spirit will protect them instead of doing the due diligence.
Yes, due diligence.
Okay? That's that tacit consent for spirit to do the work so you can be lazy.
I like the way you put it. That's right. Yeah, that was much easier. I should have just said that.
I heard you going through. Yeah, I heard you going through that, Debbie, Kathy, and it just popped into my mind, and I'm like, that's the most simplest way to put it. You're asking spirit to do it, and you're using your tacit consent to force them to do it.
Yes.
So you can be lazy instead of doing the due diligence, so spirit can co-create with you each time you're doing the due diligence.
That's exactly it.
And that's why it's really good to know all the things to do to set up and protect yourself, and living the mystical life daily that that you've set forth too, Andrew, with all the things, all the protocols that we need to do to protect ourselves, keep ourselves spiritually clean, and then go and engage spirit and work with spirit in a higher form.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to what are you prepared to do for yourself to protect yourself, keep yourself whole, and to expand in a safe manner.
Right. That leads back to discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You see how discipline and trusting in your disciplines make a bigger perspective jump when you realize when you're trusting in spirit, that's to co-create with you equally each time you're doing the discipline. You're not trusting in spirit to complete the majority of the tasks in the seen and the unseen world. You are the sovereign I am being that is responsible for your own bubble of reality. And for spirit to do an action for you, it is how they do it out of love and out of respect for the person and the life. But when we demand things out of spirit from our trust, we are eroding our connection to it.
Yeah, I like that, eroding our connection to it. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So we use this metaphor all the time. The love and lighters, flowers and rainbows and butterflies and unicorns, and nothing can hurt me until the demon sets into their frequency and they're a raging lunatic.
Yeah.
And then an hour later they're gone and they want to know what happened, and there's no love and light for that hour.
The unicorn suit is unzipped.
Exactly. The unicorn suit is unzipped.
So that's where you really have to be, like you said, disciplined and putting in co-creating with your trust and your disciplines in setting everything up in such a way that you've got it all, that it's your work to do. It's not, for spirit. It's that we trust in spirit to come through and help us, but just to become co-creators with spirit and not just expect everything to be given to us.
Exactly. What is spirit's side of trust? To assist us in clarity. If it really does anymore, it's going to take away from our ability to experience freely.
Yes.
Okay. And so many people trust moments of clarity. And then several years later, when they come out of the fog of divorce and all that other stuff, they see how infantile their actions were.
I know a lot of people have, over the years that I've come across in the spiritual communities that I've been engaged in, and they've been putting all their trust and focus in and saying, well, I'm going to create fabulous wealth for myself, and that's all their focus is, and then they get angry because spirit doesn't come through with it. And you've
Exactly.
got to look at it. You've got to look at it. Is it really appropriate? Maybe your spirit is really looking after you. Is it appropriate for you to have that wealth right now, or will it do something opposite to what you really need to be or do?
Exactly. So, what is trusting in the guru and then being blissfully ignorant? So many times people trust in the guru, but their trust in the guru ultimately is going to be betrayed when they don't follow through with discipline. So many times do I get some negative feedback. I did this, this, and this, and it didn't work. And, you find out that they didn't do it out loud. They didn't do this. They didn't do the whole thing. They did one part of it and judged it as a failure.
Right.
Huh?
Yes, I've come across people like that too, and it's just even the same with the hypnosis, the regression work that I do. I've had people have had major things happen for them in their life turn around, and I've had a couple of people, contact me and go, well, it doesn't seem to have improved very much, but they've fallen back into their old patterns. You just can't expect everything to just, if you don't put in the effort yourself as well, and the mindset, and don't go back to the old patterns and the way of thinking, then how can you bring about change? So you've got to trust the process, but you also have to be open enough to be willing to make those changes.
Exactly. When you're willing to make changes, you are balancing the seen and the unseen and the subtle side of trust. Okay,
Yes.
you are all of those forces that are positive and negative and in polarity with you and have charge about certain subjects all come to a momentary lapse of their own individuated reason, and the higher reason force takes over.
One thing I would like to mention to people is we'll be coming up to the break soon, and then we'll have half an hour left. We were going to take some calls today on anyone who'd like to share any tips on how to access their pools of energy. So that is the thing that we will talk about with callers. If you have any tips on how to access your pools of energy that you would like to share with all of us, please call in. The number is 1 for US 956-217-0261. That's 1 US 956-217-0261. And for Skype, it is Laura Lee Solomon. And you will have to ask her to request a contact first, not just call in. But that's right, isn't it? Yes.
I believe so, yes. They have to accept a friend's request.
Yes. And we'll only be talking about anyone who has any tips on how to access their pools of energy for everyone to share and learn from.
So we can have feedback from the infinite audience.
Yes, and for those of you that will be listening to this show on the replay, definitely if you have any tips or techniques on how to access your pools of energy that you'd like to share, please put them in the comment side so we can all try and learn something new.
Yes, I highly encourage everyone to use the comment section in all the different places that this video will be placed up at. It is with your feedback that gets to the next level. As I said earlier, we're going to be touching on now some more intermediate and advanced subjects. We've progressed this show where we've covered a tremendous amount of the basics. These first 7 shows are going to be one of those fundamental handbooks many people will be able to look back to as they're beginning to grow through their process. We've done a show on dreams and healing and a variety of other subjects. And today's trust concept and all of those other concepts that we put within it, we're asking you, the audience, to come up with your advanced descriptions of trust and its subtle layers that exist out there. Go ahead and put a paragraph or 2 paragraphs in the comments page at YouTube. We truly want to know what you believe about the fundamentals of trust. So we are joined by our first caller, 204. Your name and where you're calling from?
Hi, Andrew?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello. Your name
Am I
and
there?
where you're calling? Yep, you're there.
Yes, my name is... Excellent. My name is Joanne, and I'm calling from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I'm very glad I got through because I have some excellent tips about the pool of energy that you were talking about. A couple of them you've already touched on. You and Debbie, very briefly, you were mentioning the role of diet. And I found that for me, diet has been really, really critical. Specifically, what I found works well for me is to follow a low-carb eating. Because I find I'm quite sensitive to sugar. And if I eat sugar, I get energy crashes. And that is not a very good thing. So with low-carb eating, it means basically being very mindful of what comes into my mouth, consuming high-quality protein, and making sure that what I eat is as pure as I can get it, and treating all food with reverence. And I really appreciate the insights. Yeah, the insights you brought, I think, to everybody about letting go of the belief that to be on the spiritual path, it is absolutely necessary to be a vegetarian or it's necessary to be vegan. These things work for certain bodies, but you have to respect the skin suit that you are in. And so much of this is individual. You have to find what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, just because somebody else tells you it works for others, it works, it may not be for your personal situation. And I found muscle response testing has been very, very beneficial to help me decide if this food is right or that food is right, because sometimes by doing it before consuming something, you can get a better handle on the energy signature. The other thing I found has been incredibly energizing for me is a certain Qigong meditation, the microcosmic orbit. I found that helps a great deal. I do that in the morning. And I find that helps me to keep energized and alert throughout the day. And I've really fallen back on these two things immensely. The past 2 months have been very much of a, well, let's just say an energetic challenge for me. My husband passed on May the 21st of this year. So for the past 2 months, I've been going through the grieving process. And it's been very, very intense.
Can you hold on just a second? That is our music for our break, and we'll come back to you right when we come back from break.
All right, I'll just keep you on the line, yes?
Yep, just
okay.
Go ahead and mute.
Sure.
And welcome back, everyone, to our last segment on Charting Your Course. Melanie, are you there?
No, I'm Joanne.
Joanne, sorry.
Well, you got that on female. That's good.
Well, no, we were making a joke earlier because it was hard to make out your name, and our producer got it. And I even got it wrong after they gave me the right name.
That's fine, Andrew. You're forgiven. I'll start calling you Tim.
Thank you so much.
Okay, getting back to our conversation. Yes, I was explaining, my husband passed on May the 21st. So it's been very challenging working through the grieving process. But the assorted teachings, listening to you, using contract revocations, listening to other spiritual teachers helped put together the pieces of the puzzle. And the main thing that has helped immensely is keeping my energy up. Because when you're going through the grieving process, you have to stay connected and you have to fall back into clarity, because otherwise you can become overwhelmed by tsunamis of grief. So what I found helpful is tapping in, as you were saying, with trust. To me, trust is this deep knowingness. And it's an internal, it's like a spring. The deep knowingness that there is divine guidance. And my husband and I are old souls. And I say are because we still are connected. And I've had to learn a number of lessons along the way. This experience is helping me work through them. One of them is surrendering control, and the big one is letting go of expectations. And along the way, I've come to marvel at the absolute magic of synchronicities. What's been happening to me in the past 2 months is the right person, the right resource, just the right thing. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it just happens to be an unexpected gift. Happens at just the right time. And these little presents are basically like, I don't know, homing beacon, guidance beacon. It's sort of like poking, knowing me, I'm moving on in on the right path. And that in itself is energizing.
That is such a wonderful thing to share for all of us. How your process is growing into these incredible synchronicities that are giving you the wonderful gifts. It is that surrender and that taking away of expectations where the infinite spirit can give you those infinite, beautiful moment gifts that sparkle when they come.
And actually, sparkle is the best word to describe it. For me, I found letting go of expectations was a big one, because I could not understand why my husband died the way he did, and yada, 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 yada. And it took a while for that to sort of, I wouldn't say evaporate, but it's reaching layers of understanding. And once I finally made the connection, I had an expectation, and that was sort of the grease on the windshield, the fog on the windshield. Once that began to dissipate, I could move through.
You could finally move through the trauma that was created of the loss.
Yeah. Oh, no, I know. Well, essentially, the whole thing, through doing more spiritual work, the whole thing fell into place. Because in our first incarnation together, we were mother and child. And I lost him at that point and didn't handle it well. So it was full circle. This was the opportunity to resolve unfinished business. And it was making that connection. And when you can see, it's basically, I think it was Wes Penry who came up with the phrase that love is ultimate understanding. It's when you are able to achieve a level of understanding that connects your heart and your mind together, everything begins to fall into place and you can release and move on.
Yes, absolutely. And one of those basic places to start is the fetus in the mother's womb. We all started that. Well, we all share that. The other thing that we all share is we just came out of the womb. That is a way to reinitialize the radiant blueprint of health, the connection to the source being that created the birthing scenario in the very beginning so we could transit through an incarnation process.
Okay. I'm not too sure if I know exactly what you mean. Could you rephrase that, please?
Spirit is co-creating with us. And sometimes our trust in spirit, like I said earlier, is to do more work than equal co-creation.
Okay.
When we are in those highest frequencies and we get those unique spiritual sparkly gifts, it is because we co-created it. We connected to our divine source self, and through our emanation, co-creation was the mystical experience.
Yeah. In other words, the frequencies match.
Yes, they match.
Yeah. So,
therefore, they expand your knowingness. See, a lot of other people. A lot of other people don't realize that knowingness doesn't have seams in it. Knowingness is ever expansive, and our limits of our knowingness are trust. Yeah.
You have to definitely go beyond the self-created boundaries and belief systems.
That's
and sometimes it's very difficult to realize that you are still enmeshed in an expectation or in a belief system that you've developed, and that is what's holding you back. You have to break free from that and realize, how can I put this? The vastness of our interconnection. Because when you realize that everything is interconnected, you realize that there are levels of interconnection. And you can go beyond one level and access a higher level. And once you can tap into that higher level, you realize that you are a multidimensional being.
Yep. That's the realization that everyone's going to get to. So elegantly put, and you are spot on.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Spot on.
Spot on.
No, but I'm glad because the thing is, it's a very personal, very intense journey, and it's something that my husband's transition has really helped me achieve. We are twin flames, and we are connected. And I do have, let me put it this way: telepathic, synchronistic communications. Does that make
Absolutely.
a certain degree of sense to everybody?
Some people
yes.
call them visitations, but for you, it's a more elongated process.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say not quite. No, visitations is not quite the right term.
That's why I said an elongated
just say-
process.
Yeah, okay, yeah, more like.
Periods.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Verbally, it's difficult to put into language because it's not as concrete as the physical mind would like it to be. It's more like sensations, and it's definitely a level of trust. And it's certainly letting go of doubt and letting go of basically letting go of 3D limitations. That might be the best way of phrasing it. And it's experiencing multidimensionality. And I guess that's perhaps the best way of expressing it. It's experiencing multidimensionality rather than just talking about it.
Yep, stopping the pontification and beginning the actualization process.
Oh, I love the word pontification. Yes, that's it exactly. Because sometimes, all of the time, experience is the best teacher.
Absolutely.
It's perhaps the most painful and sometimes the most unpleasant to have to go through these experiences. But it is only by passing through the actual experience itself, when you come out on the other side, that you can appreciate what you've picked up along the way.
We have all gone through the eye of the needle of experience, and on the other side have looked back and go, oh, why? Look what I've done.
Yeah. So it's been quite a trip, and I'm still going through it. But it's funny. I just turned 65 yesterday, so that was pretty much of a turning point. It's just knowing that it's forward, and it's the fact that you. As people on this planet, we're all here for a reason. We're all working through our stuff and going through fulfilling our different contracts that we've made, and we're basically picking up our life lessons along the way. And it's amazing how things can go full circle and then just keep on expanding from there.
Hey, Joanne, it's Debbie here.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi. I really have to honour you for coming on and expressing beautifully what you're expressing today. I find that the experience that you're talking about also with your husband, getting the wisdom from realising that you both had unresolved issue to grow from. It was, like you did that full circle. And I find that a lot of the time with the work that I do, and you're taken back to people into a past life, that they get to see what it is that they chose to experience in that past life but didn't quite get it, and they bring it forward as an experience into this lifetime. And when they get that wisdom and that they get that resolution, they get the healing. That's when the healing comes. It's when you all of a sudden get that realization, oh, I chose this experience, this is where it's from it, we came through together, this is our soul contract for this lifetime. And that expectation disappears. All of a sudden, the peace comes back into your heart, that you realize that was in a journey that you both chose to experience together. And so the love and the connection is still there, but the pain of that experience, it starts to diminish. And that's when the joy and the understanding comes in. And so you got that experience and you got that wisdom all on your own. And I have to really congratulate that you got yourself to that wonderful point.
Well, I don't think I got it all on my own. The one thing one of my neighbors said, and this first happened when my husband passed, he said, you really need to have a support network. And that resonated because I have had a remarkable support network, not very big, very small, a small physical support network of a few family members and some fantastic neighbors, but an enormous and energetic support network. And that makes a tremendous amount of difference. My husband and I have done a lot of past life regression work on our own. We also have done work reading the Akashic Records, and that's helped tremendously. And what I do believe happened along the way with his choosing to pass in this way, he had various health issues that he was resolving, because that was one of his life themes, health and faith and joy. It was very important for him to die in a state of equanimity and acceptance. He had a very painful death. He had lung cancer. And I do believe, I don't know if maybe Andrew could shed a bit of clarity on this, but this is this feeling that part of his choosing to pass in that way was to resolve clear ancestral lines, and to release that negative anger, resentment, and the negativity of cancer, by passing through that with acceptance. And somewhere along the line, am I phrasing that in a clear enough manner for everybody to understand?
Yes. I will add a layer there. Every time there is cancer, there is a spiritual contract.
Yes.
Every single time.
Yeah.
The spiritual contract oftentimes has what I call fine print in it. Sometimes it's the fine print the soul sneaks in on the system, like surviving cancer, or the system sneaks in the fine print that says, all right, you'll get your greatest benefits near the end of your journey with cancer, but you're still going to die.
Yeah.
Oftentimes the soul, as the baby and the fetus, knows its death date. And it uses its death date to make another soul can come in and take its birthplace, not birth date, place.
Yeah.
So your husband, along with the cancer, created a frequency in which he could transit out, heal the cancer, and then allow something to take his place that would have never been able to take his place because he cured the cancer in the lineage.
Yeah. Could you repeat the last words? Something about the word before the lineage. I didn't catch the last couple of words you said.
He let another being in who would have never been in before because he cured the ancestral lineage of cancer. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do believe that it was curing the ancestral lineage that had something to do with it.
That means another baby was born with the potential of cancer eliminated from them.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, no, it's been very raw. I mean, this has not been I accept my husband as past, his love and light, and so on and so forth. It's been a couple of other things I might offer to the listeners, because there are people who are experiencing what I've experienced on this. I mean, this happens because it's just life in 3D. I chose to have my husband cremated. This is a decision on our part. I wrote him a farewell letter, in which I thanked him for the fantastic marriage. We've been married on August 6th. We've been married 40 years. Fantastic life we had together, and it was a fantastic marriage. We were on the spiritual path together. We supported each other through a lot. We made wonderful discoveries. I celebrated our life together. I also deliberately canceled any contracts, any unresolved or unfinished contracts we had between us, so that he could transition easily. And I made sure that letter was cremated along with him. Then we didn't have a traditional funeral. Instead, I took his remains and went to one of our provincial parks and scattered his ashes myself in a clump of trees. And that was the right thing to do. Because when I was speaking to another energy worker, I was getting some reflexology. We were talking about this. She said, I could feel with that scattering of the ashes, the feeling I got from the way I described it is that it basically liberated his spirit. And everything was sort of like the finality. Everything that was done, and the incarnation was finished. It sort of brought closure to everything. That to me, go ahead.
When one cremates, you are using alchemy so that whatever soul shards that weren't ready to die from the cancer, because cancer, what it does is it creates fractional soul shards of yourself that eventually take over the cancer itself, and then you pass out and you die, and they don't want to die, and it creates like a subtle ghost in the background.
Yeah.
So you were taking the Cancer's bigger purpose, which is to fractionalize the soul, so the whole soul doesn't go through its life review.
Okay, I do believe he had a full life review. Never mind, I do believe he had a full life review.
Oh, absolutely, he did.
Yeah,
That's
that was.
why
I mean, I'm not saying he did. That was it because I knew that. Some of the other things that I did, I also belong to energetic synthesis, and Lisa Renee had an excellent meditation that I was using to help him as well on his way. Well, I almost forgot when I did the cremation, scattering of the ashes. I made it into a sacred ceremony, and I read a couple of contracts. I read one revocation and one invocation. I read the Divine Masculine because I thought it was appropriate, and then I also concluded by reading the Shaman's Death.
So how do you feel when you're using those revocations in your sacred ceremonies?
Sometimes it's a bit of a push because I'm glad you had this topic today about self-discipline. Like all of us, I could use a 48-hour day. And sometimes it's a matter of fitting everything in. So sometimes the revocation, one more thing to do. But I do it because it's important. It's as simple as that. And that's something else with energy and self-discipline. Sometimes you have to push yourself.
That's right.
And that's just the way it is because we are living in 3D world. And as Lisa Renee once said in one of her newsletter, sometimes you just got to get down on your hands and knees and scrub the toilet.
That's right. Absolutely, you do. Especially in your own house, and people. Especially in your own house, and people are going to come over.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's just the way life is. And I don't know. How do you manage time? This is one of my big challenges. Maybe in the few remaining minutes, you could give us all some pointers on effective 3D time management, because particularly since my husband has passed, and this is one of the things I'm still working through, is I've had to learn new skills. I've had to learn the jobs he used to do, add them to the jobs I now have to do, and it seems to me that I'm constantly trying to fit everything in. So life is a spiritual practice because I'm constantly working on being mindful as I'm doing these tasks, realizing that this is something that everybody else on the planet is going through. It's increased my empathy with everyone else on the human race because I can see I've had wonderful resources, a lot of support. Most people who are going through this don't have this level of understanding. And having the understanding makes a huge difference. But still, it's scrambling through doing what needs to be done in a day. So what's your secret?
What's my secret?
Yeah.
I understand that there's a month ahead of me. And that previous month, I do a create my month process. I do a create my life process also. As well as the 20 hours a month of regular ceremony that I do that manages my unseen world to create synchronicities in that month that I'm creating. I become an equal co-creator in it. And then time management is a matter of I am presence awareness.
Yeah. In other words, you simply, it happens. And you do what is there right in front of you because you've made it happen already.
Right, and you must roll with the punches where things that aren't in your 1 month plan that occur. That's called evolution. And when evolution comes in front of you, it is great spirit, great mystery, working within those synchronicities in a longer term strategy that I must be aware of in my knowingness and not allowed to go to my blissfully ignorant side and ignore the omens from the message of the system, great spirit, my friends and family. So each month there's a incoming frequency of omens that will only individually happen in the day, but I've experienced them ahead of time because I've chose to create an agenda that deals with the month and the year ahead of time. I created that by going back to the beginning of my birth and my fetus in the mother's womb and tracking back all of my life stories. By doing that individuated process, my agenda of each day living the mystical life is present. And my agenda is my boundaries. My agenda is my due diligence. My agenda is also my discipline. So when I do tasks, I do them out of joy and heart space and love, and I don't see them as tasks to be accomplished on a list. That was the bigger process of learning for me, that when you make a list and you don't complete it, or you do complete it, do you need to give yourself a pat on the back even? The ultimate answer is no. You'll get your pat on the back and the energy each time you do the task because it's equal co-creation and love source as part of the original end agenda I created a month earlier. That's my
Well, that makes sense, yeah. Yeah. Okay, the joy is in the doing. And it's basically what you do, you set the intention and let the universe provide the details.
Not really. Not really. It
no?
is.
Okay. All right.
No. That is. There's a big
I'm in
difference.
the wrong.
Big
wrong
difference
stick.
between,
Okay, pick up the right stick.
There's a big difference between setting the intentions as an adult practitioner who's fully aware of their multidimensionality. It is. I am taking all of the context that I'm in, and I'm making that ritualized so that any future context that I come in has been ritualized and the energy has been dealt with, not just through standard intent, but adult esoteric practitioner intent. So there are choice points in your future that are nowhere going to come. In 3 weeks from now, you're going to have your morning dump. 5 weeks from now, that you will go out and meet a friend one day, so on and so forth. Those are things that are going to happen. And in your spiritual agenda, you send energy and frequencies to those future beings as part of your previous month's agenda. Mastering the schedule as the multidimensional, multifunctional, photonic being of light who is not limited by dates and times and calendars and lists, but does them because each moment of doing in that singular moment will express on a higher layer what the soul's intent is with the I am presence. The I am presence is trying to instill intent to the soul, when in fact it's the soul oftentimes giving intent to the I am presence so they can go forward